$400,000 in one night. In 1994, Foxwoods Casino Security recorded the biggest blackjack win. The player disappeared without breaking any state laws. 2 months later, a similar story was repeated in Las Vegas, then Atlantic City. The casinos realized they were at war. 3 months ago, I was digging through the archives, researching classic casino robberies. You know, the standard pattern. Guys with guns burst in through the main entrance, threaten the cashiers, fill bags with money and drive off in stolen cars. Hollywood classics. But in the course of my search, I stumbled across something strange. On one half-forgotten forum dedicated to casino security, the moderator was discussing the biggest heist in Nevada history, only without a single shot fired. No masks or threats. What's more, technically, it wasn't even a robbery. "These bastards stole more money than all the armed gangs combined," he wrote, "and there was nothing we could do about it because they didn't break any laws." Really? Steal millions without breaking the law? Sounds crazy, but curiosity got the best of me, so I started digging deeper. Late last night, while reviewing declassified documents from the Nevada Gaming Commission, I found mention of the mysterious MIT watch list. 23 names. All are MIT students and alumni. All are banned from entering America's largest casinos. The reason for the ban made me reread the document 3 times. Suspicion of using advanced mathematical techniques to gain an unfair advantage in blackjack. Maths? Do maths get people banned from casinos? What nonsense is that? I decided to find some information on these people. I started by searching for the name William Kaplan in connection with MIT and casinos. The first results led me down a rabbit hole of old newspaper archives and half-forgotten websites. On one forum dedicated to the history of gambling, I found a discussion of the legend of mathematicians from MIT. Most commenters considered it an urban legend, but one user left a link to a Boston Globe article from the year 1999 with the headline, "MIT students turn blackjack into science." The article was short but intriguing. The journalist wrote about a group of students who use complex mathematical calculations to gain an advantage in casinos. One Bill Kaplan was mentioned as the organizer, but details were scarce. Digging further, I came across the archives of the Las Vegas Review-Journal, an article from 1993. Mystery investment firm closes after making millions in profits. The firm was called Strategic Investments. The principal was William Kaplan. Bill K. from the casino blacklist, the William Kaplan of the newspapers. The coincidence was starting to look too strange. At the end of the article, the journalist mentioned that the company specialized in high-risk mathematical strategies and that most of the employees were MIT graduates. The same 23 names from the watch list. I found Strategic Investments liquidation documents on the website. Dry numbers and dates, but one detail stood out. The company had delivered returns that exceeded those of most Wall Street hedge funds over the 3 years of its existence. The puzzle was starting to come together. But what I discovered next made me question my own sanity. Because according to the documents I found, this group of students hadn't just beaten the casino, they had turned blackjack into a perfectly fine-tuned money-printing machine. And their secret wasn't luck or good fortune, but something far more dangerous to the entire gambling industry. At first, I didn't believe it. A group of students beat the biggest casinos in the world using maths? Really? Casinos spend billions to ensure that every game is guaranteed to make them a profit. Every machine, every table, every roulette wheel is set up so that the money flows in one direction, into the pockets of the establishment. But the deeper I dug, the more I realized. Perhaps there is one game after all, where maths can work against the casino. It all started with a book. In the archives of MIT, I found a reference to Professor Edward Thorp's work, To Defeat the Dealer, published in 1962nd year. In the description, I will leave a link to the material where this system and Thorp's book itself are discussed in detail. Thorpe was no ordinary professor. He specialized in probability theory and mathematical analysis. His idea sounded revolutionary. Casinos can be beaten. It seemed crazy at first. After all, everyone knows the casino always wins. But Thorpe proved something amazing. Blackjack is fundamentally different from all other gambling games. Take a roulette wheel. Each spin of the wheel is independent of the previous spin. It doesn't matter if red falls out 10 times in a row. The probability of black falling out on the next spin is exactly the same, 47 6/10% in European roulette. Always. It's the same with slot machines. Each button press is a separate random event. Previous results have no effect on future results. But blackjack is a completely different story. In blackjack, cards are not returned to the deck after being dealt. If 4 aces are dealt, there are no more aces in the remaining cards. If many small cards are dealt, there are more large cards in the deck. Blackjack is a memory game, and that's where the fun part comes in. Thorpe calculated that with a perfect basic strategy, the mathematical advantage of the casino in blackjack is less than 0.5%. This is negligible compared to other games. In roulette, the house advantage is 2.7%. In slot machines, it is between 5 and 15%. But 0.5% is still a casino advantage. How do you reverse it? The answer lay in the card count. Think of the deck as a living organism that is constantly changing. Each card dealt changes the composition of the remaining cards and, consequently, the probabilities. The big cards, tens, jacks, queens, kings, and aces, are favorable to the player. Small cards, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, 6s, are favorable to the dealer. Why? The dealer is required to pick up cards up to 17 points. If there are many small cards in the deck, the dealer is less likely to overcall. If there are many large cards, the dealer is more likely to get 21 or overcall. Thorpe created a counting system that tracked the ratio of large to small cards in real time. Small cards were assigned a +1, large cards a -1. Neutral cards, 7s, 8s, 9s, were counted as 0. A player mentally keeps score. A 5 is out, +1. A king comes out, -1. If the score is positive, there are more big cards in the deck, and the player gets an advantage. If the score is negative, the casino has the advantage. It looks simple on paper. Thorpe even tested his system in practice, turning $1,000 into $10,000 in a few months. But there was a catch. Counting cards required incredible concentration. You had to simultaneously count each card, memorize the current score, calculate the true score, taking into account the number of decks remaining, make decisions about bets and game actions, all without giving yourself away. Most of the players just didn't get it right. Some were miscounting. Some couldn't vary the stakes properly. Some gave themselves away with strange behavior. But most importantly, even perfect card counting gave an advantage of only 1 or 2%. And in bad conditions, with frequent shuffling, a large number of decks, and betting restrictions, the advantage could drop to 0. A 1 or 2% advantage meant that you needed huge stakes and a huge bankroll to make a serious profit. The average player couldn't afford it, and if he could, he would quickly fall under the suspicion of the casino. It was a vicious circle. The Thorpe system worked in theory, but in practice, most attempts failed. That's why I couldn't understand how the MIT students managed to turn this theory into a machine for making millions. They clearly had some secret that had eluded thousands of other players, something that allowed them to bypass all the limitations of the system and turn a modest mathematical advantage into a constant stream of huge money. And the secret wasn't in the maths. It lay in something much trickier. The more I studied the history of card counting, the more I realized the scale of the problem. Thorpe's system was brilliant in theory, but a nightmare in practice. Lone mathematicians had been trying to get rich for decades, and most had failed. But the MIT students had clearly found a way around all these limitations, and the key lay in one man. Digging through the archives of the Harvard Business Review, I came across a short article from 1978. Harvard graduate William Kaplan had postponed his business school admission to pursue research on mathematical strategies in entertainment. Entertainment? That's an interesting way of putting it. What follows is more. In the Harvard Crimson student newspaper, I found an interview with Kaplan before he left for Las Vegas. The guy spoke openly about his intention to turn Thorpe's theory into a practical business model. When asked by a journalist about the risks, he replied, "Any business has risks, but if you have maths on your side, the risks can be minimized." It sounded cocky, but the result was impressive. In the archives of the Nevada State Internal Revenue Service, I found the return of one W. Kaplan for the year 1978. $35,000 in income, with a starting capital of $1,000, 9 months. But the most interesting thing began later. In May 1980, a small article appeared in the MIT Tech student newspaper. Harvard Graduate Lectures on Practical Applications of Probability Theory. The lecturer was William Kaplan. Coincidence? Not likely. Next, I found something that made me rethink the whole story. In the archives of the Lincoln Laboratory at MIT, I found a report from the year 1979 entitled Computer Modeling of Blackjack Strategies. The author was graduate student J.P. Massar. Massar used the computing power of the mainframe to test Thorpe's theory in millions of simulations. His findings were revolutionary. The system works, but only if there are enough players and coordination between them. The number of players and coordination, here it is. In the same report, Massar wrote, "Individual card counting is limited by bankroll size and casino attention, but a team of players can spread the risk and go unnoticed for much longer." Team. Not a lone genius, but a group of people working to a common plan. And that's when the puzzle began to take shape. In the MIT student newspaper of October of 1980, I found an advertisement for an investment club to explore alternative financial strategies. The organizers were Massar and Kaplan, a visiting consultant, but this was no ordinary student association. In the archives of Massachusetts found documents on the registration of an official partnership called MIT Blackjack Team, with the authorized capital of $89,000. $89,000 and $1,980 is serious money. Where did the students get that kind of money? The answer was found in the minutes of the investment club. Kaplan wasn't just sharing his experience. He was demanding a complete reorganization of his approach. No spontaneous trips to the casino, no emotional betting, no amateurishness. "We are not creating a gambling group, but an investment company," his minutes quoted him as saying. We will have strict procedures, uniform standards, a system of reporting and profit sharing. Kaplan insisted that every member of the team undergo intensive training, not just learning the theory of card counting, but practicing it to the point of automaticity. What's more, they learned to play different roles. And this is where the genius part began. The traditional approach to card counting has been primitive. One player sits at the table, counts cards, and varies bets according to the situation. The problem is that this behavior is too conspicuous. Casinos are quick to spot such players by their characteristic betting pattern. Kaplan proposed a radically different scheme. Divide the process into roles. One person counts the cards but does not change the size of bets. Another receives a signal and makes large bets only in favorable situations. The third person can play the role of a distraction, ingeniously simple and incredibly difficult to detect. In the financial records of the partnership, I found the first results. Within 10 weeks of the team's work in 1980, the authorized capital had doubled. 89,000 turned into 178,000. Double your money in 10 weeks? Hedge funds could only dream of such results, but that was just the beginning. Because what I discovered about their modus operandi was beyond my wildest expectations. These guys hadn't just learned how to count cards. They had created a whole system of psychological manipulation that made them virtually invisible to casino security. And the amazing thing is that it was all perfectly legal. Now I understood how they managed to remain undetected. The role system was ingenious, but the devil was in the details. And the more I dug into the documents, the more I admired the sophistication of their approach. In materials related to the MIT Blackjack team's training, I came across descriptions of their internal training program. The descriptions of the training said that it was not just a card-counting course. Players learned how to behave at the table so that their actions looked natural to others. They practiced their roles from quiet observer to confident big player, and rehearsed how to communicate the right signals without words or unnecessary movements. Each newcomer had to learn 3 basic roles. The first is the observer, the most inconspicuous but critical position. The observer sat down at the table, made minimal bets, $5 to $10, and silently counted cards. No sudden changes in behavior, no big bets. Just a regular player who loses small amounts of money. But when the score became positive, when the deck had accumulated large cards, the observer signaled. This is where the most interesting part began. In the training protocols, I found a description of a signaling system that looked more like a spy code. Arms crossed on the chest meant warm deck, counting +2 or 3. Hands behind the back, hot deck, +4 and above. Rubbing the nose, very hot deck, +6 or more, but these were only visual cues. Code words disguised as ordinary conversation were used to transmit the exact count. I think we should order a cocktail, meant a count of +4. Shall we go out to dinner? +6. I have to get up early tomorrow, +8. Just a normal conversation at the gaming table that didn't raise any suspicions. At the signal of the observer, the second role, the big player, entered the game. In the training materials, they were called in different ways. Sometimes gorillas, sometimes controllers. The essence was the same, a person who appeared at the table only when maths was on the team's side. The big player would get a signal from the observer and approach the table with words like, "Oh, blackjack, can I join you?" He'd sit down and immediately start making big bets, $100, $200, $500 a hand. For the casino, it looked completely natural. A rich player decided to try his luck at a hot table. There was no connection with the quiet guy who had been sitting there for half an hour. betting a tenner each. But the most brilliant thing was the psychology. The big players weren't just betting, they were playing a role. The role of the slightly drunken rich man who throws money around. The role of the naive tourist who feels lucky today. The role of the self-confident businessman who is used to taking risks. In the team's reports, I found a description of one such character. A guy named Jeff played the role of the golden boy, the son of rich parents who spends his daddy's money. He wore expensive watches, ordered champagne, tipped generously, and behaved as if money meant nothing to him. On the first night, this golden boy won $2,500. In a few hours of one night, $25,000. $25,000 for one night? In the 1980s, that was the average American salary for 6 months. But the team didn't stop there. By the mid-80s, their operations had reached industrial scale. There have been trips that brought in $190,000 a weekend. $190,000 for 2 days of work. Ben Mesrich's book, Blowing Up Vegas, describes perhaps the team's most stunning success. A series of games at the Desert Inn, which, according to the author, brought them over $1.5 million in a matter of days. Mesrich writes that casino security officials, noticing unusually large blackjack winnings, launched an internal investigation to try to understand what was going on at their tables. The numbers were adding up. But how did they do it? The answer was found in the team's work protocols. By the late 80s, they had perfected their system. Large operations involve 15 to 20 people at a time. A few observers at different tables, a few big players, coordinators who kept an eye on the big picture. Moreover, they learned how to work with several casinos at the same time. While one group played at Caesar's Palace, another worked at MGM Grand, and the third at Mirage. Reports mention that at the peak of activity, the team could shoot more than $400,000 in one weekend, working in different establishments in Las Vegas and Atlantic City. $20 million a year. And all with the help of maths and acting. But here a logical question arose. Were the casino security services really that naive? Didn't anyone notice that something strange was going on? Of course they did. And what I discovered about the confrontation between the MIT team and the casino industry was as fascinating as the money-making scheme itself. Because the casinos weren't going down without a fight, and a real war of wits ensued. The thing is, casino founders aren't stupid. They know that every dollar of profit is built on a mathematical advantage, and when someone starts systematically winning large sums, it's not luck. It's a threat to the entire business model. Digging through the security archives of various casinos, I discovered that the war against the MIT team didn't start immediately. At first, they were perceived as ordinary lucky people. But when the winnings became regular and the amounts astronomical, the industry sounded the alarm. An internal MGM Grand Memorandum for the year 1987 stated, "During the past 6 months, we have recorded anomalous blackjack winnings totaling over $800,000. The players are not visibly related, but statistical analysis shows patterns that cannot be explained by chance. 800 grand in 6 months at the MGM Grand alone, and that's just what they noticed." The security services began sharing information. The real war has begun. The first line of defense was the dealers. They paid attention to players who dramatically increased bets in the middle or end of the deck. They kept an eye out for those who thought too long before making decisions. They immediately reported any suspicious players to a supervisor. But the MIT team was too good for such primitive detection methods. Their role system made individual patterns virtually invisible. Then the casinos moved on to more serious measures. Griffin Investigations, a detective agency specializing in casino problems, has created databases of unwanted players with photos and detailed descriptions. In the year 1989, this database was called the Black Book, not an official government document, but a private register exchanged between casinos. It included not only cheaters and crooks, but also legitimate players whose methods the casinos considered undesirable. The MIT team has been dubbed the Dinosaurs. Why dinosaurs? It is still unclear. By 1999, 18 members of the MIT team were already in the Black Book. Their pictures were hanging in the surveillance rooms of the largest casinos in America. But that was just the beginning of the technology war. In the financial records of Scientific Games Corporation, a company that manufactured casino equipment, there is an order for new generation automatic shuffling machines. The cost per machine is $45,000. The order is for 300 units, 300 automatic shufflers at $45,000 each. $13.5 million to fight a handful of students. These machines shuffled the cards after each hand, making counting impossible. But they had a serious drawback. They slowed down the game, which reduced the casino's profits. So most establishments took a different route. Instead of using one deck, they began to use 6 or 8 decks at a time. This did not eliminate counting completely, but made it much more difficult. The MIT team adapted. They developed advanced counting systems for multi-deck games and methods for determining depth of penetration. Casinos have tightened their response. Caesar's Palace implemented an early shuffle procedure when card counting is suspected. Dealers were given the right to shuffle the deck at any time without explanation. But the most effective weapon has been video surveillance. The system was called Eye in the Sky at a cost of $2 million. It included 48 high-resolution cameras, computerized facial recognition, and automatic tracking of suspicious behavior. 48 cameras per casino. In 1990, that was fantastic. The system worked simply. As soon as a dinosaur appeared in the casino, the computer automatically alerted the security service. Within a minute, a security officer approached the player with a polite request to leave the establishment. By the year 1991, the situation had become critical. The team tried to find workarounds. They started using professional makeup, changed hairstyles, wore contact lenses of different colors. Even plastic surgery is mentioned. One of the players changed the shape of his nose to fool the facial recognition system. But technology has evolved faster than camouflage techniques. In 1992, the thing the team dreaded most happened. At Foxwoods Casino, the same casino where they had once won $400,000 in one night, an incident occurred that changed everything. Jeff, the golden boy, was identified by security 20 minutes after entering the casino. But instead of the usual request to leave the establishment, he was taken to a separate room. Backrooming was the name of the procedure. The player was isolated, photographed from all angles, fingerprinted, and had a so-called educational conversation. Formally, it was not an arrest, but in essence, psychological pressure. He was held in an isolation room at Foxwoods Casino for 4 hours without being charged. According to a casino spokesman, he is suspected of fraud, but no evidence was provided. 4 hours, no charges, no lawyer. It was a signal. Casinos showed that they were ready to use any methods, even those on the edge of the law. After the Foxwoods incident, many team members began to have doubts. In 1993, The Las Vegas Review-Journal published an article with a pithy headline, "End of an Era. Mysterious Investment Company Closes Fund." It was about strategic investments. But what exactly made William Kaplan decide to shut down the most profitable enterprise in the history of gambling? What broke the team that seemed invincible? And why did the million-dollar machine stop exactly in 1993? The answers to these questions were much more complicated than I expected. By the year 1993, the perfect money-printing machine began to fail in a major way. The backroom incident at Foxwoods was a turning point, but it wasn't just psychological pressure that was undermining the foundations of the MIT empire. The very mathematics that had once worked in their favor was beginning to turn against them. By the early 90s, the team had grown to several dozen people. Too many people knew about the system. Too many faces were in the casino databases. And most importantly, the profits had to be divided among more and more participants. William Kaplan faced the classic problem of any successful business. Scaling up was killing efficiency. The same $400,000 per weekend that once seemed fantastic was now divided between 20 or 30 people. Each participant's share was shrinking, and the risks were only growing. Other factors came into play. By the 90s, casino technology had reached such a level that facial recognition systems worked almost without error. Any dinosaur was identified within minutes of entering the establishment. Moreover, casinos started to coordinate their actions on a national level. Blacklists were updated in real time. A player spotted in Las Vegas in the morning was already persona non grata in Atlantic City by the evening. Foxwoods became the symbol of the end. It was there that the security systems reached such perfection that even the team's best players could not work for more than a few hours without detection. In 1993, Kaplan made the inevitable decision. Strategic Investments was officially liquidated. The team gradually disintegrated. Some went into traditional finance, applying the same analytical skills to Wall Street. Some founded technology companies. Many became successful businessmen, using the risk management experience gained at the gaming tables. Jeff, the golden boy, became a strategic planning consultant. Massar went into venture capital investment. Kaplan himself founded several successful healthcare companies. The story of the MIT team could have remained a legend, known only to a narrow circle of professional players. But in 2003, Ben Mesrich's book was published, which turned it into a bestseller. And in 2008 the book was made into a film, 21, with Kevin Spacey. However, Hollywood, as usual, embellished reality. In the film, the MIT team looked like a group of rebels fighting against the system. In reality, they were disciplined mathematicians who turned a game of chance into an exact science. This is the story of the MIT blackjack team. I will leave all the sources for this case in the description to the video. This story proves sometimes the most sophisticated schemes work not because of deception or breaking the law, but because of knowledge and discipline. Maths versus luck. Brains against the system. And who knows how many more such stories are hiding in the archives of the internet, waiting for their researcher. As always, your Mr. Dark Web.